Welcome everyone to Zoom Palestine, to a wonderful presentation by Phil Hopper on images of conflict. Welcome Phil and Jude and Steve. I hope you're going to say something, Steve, about Belfast. Great. So hi Sarah, hello Ra, and Jude. So I'm going to play a short video while we're waiting for other people to come on, a couple minutes that I found on the wall, which was kind of interesting. So let me do a little screen share. This was kind of an interesting video about the wall. So I think you should enjoy that. Let me put it on and do my screen share. Inshallah, everything will work. Oh. Yalla. Why is my computer? Okay, because it's a computer. All right. Okay, here we go. This is a short video, very interesting, on the wall.
Infamous man-made structures in the world. In some places, it's standing in front of one of the most infamous man-made structures in the world. In some places, it's as high as 8 meters, making it twice the height of the Berlin Wall. It runs 280 miles long, basically the distance between Philadelphia and Boston. It's been under construction for the past 13 years, and it's still not done. Oh, and according to the International Court of Justice, this wall is completely illegal. I'm in the occupied West Bank, where Palestinians have been living under Israeli military occupation since 1967. The wall is one of the most imposing parts of that occupation. Israel began building the wall in the early 2000s during a wave of suicide bombings that targeted Israelis. The Israeli government calls it the separation barrier or the security fence and says the aim is to keep out Palestinian attackers. But thousands of Palestinians still manage to get across every day looking for work. So if the wall doesn't stop people from crossing, then what does it do? Let's take a look at the root of the wall. You'd think a wall meant to stop people from entering its territory would be built on Israel's border. But 85% of it is inside the occupied West Bank on Palestinian land. International law says it's illegal to build settlements like these on occupied territory. But this is one of over 200 settlements and settler outposts housing 500,000 Israelis in the occupied West Bank. Technically, these settlers live outside of Israel proper, but the wall has shifted the boundary between Israel and the West Bank to swallow up more Palestinian land. When the wall is completed, an area the size of Chicago will have been added to the Israeli side of the wall. While settlers who live west of the wall are full Israeli citizens with rights and benefits, the Palestinians who live in that same territory have none. This is the village of Daba near Qalqilia. It's just one of many Palestinian villages that lost at least half of its land to the wall. Israel used dynamite to clear the path for the wall, damaging homes and the local school. In some parts, the wall is made of concrete, and in other parts, it's fencing, depending on the proximity to Palestinian homes. I'm standing at a gate that Israel only opens once a year to allow villagers to harvest their olives, which was once their main source of livelihood. What happens when the wall cuts right through a neighborhood? This entire Palestinian village called Hizma has been walled off from the rest of Jerusalem, except for the homes of a couple of Palestinian families that got stuck on the Israeli side of the wall. And people here aren't even allowed to go visit their old neighbors. Hizma is technically part of Jerusalem, meaning it's on Israel to provide the villagers services like trash pickup and security, but it doesn't, and the villagers are basically forced to fend for themselves. You'd think the biblical city of Bethlehem would have a booming tourism industry, but here you can find one of the clearest examples of how the wall has devastated the Palestinian economy. Many businesses have shut down and families have left. When it's completed, Bethlehem will be completely cut off from its agricultural land, its churches, and more. The wall, along with a series of illegal Israeli settlements, are physically strangling the city and it can't expand. And because of the wall, most Palestinians coming from Bethlehem cannot take this road to nearby Jerusalem. You can only get through this checkpoint if you have a special permit, which most Palestinians can't get. So there you have it. This wall, a fixture of the occupation, has destroyed neighborhoods, strangled the economy, and illegally grabbed more Palestinian land. Palestinians call it the apartheid wall. And the question is, how long will it stand?
Okay. The little factual data is always useful when we're going to be discussing the images of conflict on the wall. So I want to welcome everybody to our weekly Zoom Palestine, and as custom, I will light our candle, hoping that our presentation today and then you will continue to shed light on this difficult situation in the hopes of peace. And particularly with our new administration coming in, it's incumbent on all of us to put the pressure on to let justice and peace prevail. So I want to introduce everybody to our main presenter, Phil Hopper, who I was fortunate enough to have as a colleague in Amman, and then was able to continue a friendship when he left our school and began teaching actually in Jerusalem. So, Phil, um, could you tell us how you got into doing what you're doing? Why did you become interested in these images, graffiti images?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. In 2005, I was working for Fordham University and was sent on a Council for the International Exchange of Scholars seminar, a week-long seminar in Northern Ireland. And I took a few photographs, not really thinking about it much. And when I got back, the photos of the paramilitary murals just popped out at me. They were graphic in ways that I'd never seen used in public display before. And so subsequently, I, as you know, ended up teaching 4 summers in Amman. And I was talking about the murals once with a colleague, I don't remember who, and they said, well, if you're really interested in that stuff, you really need to go to the West Bank. And through an NGO called Open Bethlehem, and the leader of that at the time, Leila Censur, she helped me get an invitation to visit the Dheisheh Palestinian refugee camp, where I've now visited and occasionally been in short-term residence for 14 years now. And also, that airport agrees. Hear you.
Rabbit likes to participate because he's an ancient Canaan breed dog, the dog from Canaan. So he's a Palestinian. So she will put in her input once.
So anyway, I've subsequently visited Northern Ireland every 2 or 3 or 4 years. I try to go back to some of the same locations in a longitudinal sense so that I can see how they change over time. And in the course of the presentation, you'll see the simplified version of what I've come up with in terms of kind of coming up with a rubric to try to understand how these images work. The images don't always line up perfectly with my my voice because I just did it live as a recorded PowerPoint presentation yesterday. But be patient, please, and eventually it will make sense. My comments will make sense in regard to the images that you'll see. Can you hear you?
Jackie, you're talking, but you're muted.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I'm unmuted now. Yeah, thank you. It's a dog muting a necessity. But Phil, you're right now. Your field is you're teaching communications, correct?
Right.
And photography. So his specialty is photography and communications, and so he has a particularly powerful expertise with his work. So, does anybody have any questions for Phil before we start his presentation? Oh, okay. So let me see if I can get this to work. Hopefully, inshallah, it will work. Alrighty. Okay, everybody see it? Phil, you see
I
it?
can see it. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, good. All right, here we go.
Go to
What I've been doing for the last 15 or 16 years has been looking at issues of conflict, vernacular expressions of conflict, people, not unofficial messages that come out of conflicts. In particular, I've been looking at the conflict in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and West Bank. So this is a wall here in Belfast that separates the Shankill and the, which is a Protestant or Unionist neighborhood, from the Falls Road, which is a Republican or Catholic neighborhood. And this is Danny Devaney. He is a Republican muralist and graffiti artist of some renown, who I was lucky enough to meet in my first visit to Belfast. And this is a wall that Danny knows.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah. He paints on the opposite side of it. This is the Protestant side. He paints on the Republican or Catholic side. This is my former student, Ahmed Hamidat, who presently lives in Dheisheh camp, the Dheisheh Palestinian refugee camp, which is just outside of Bethlehem. And behind Ahmed is his mural of George Harbash, who is a founder of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. And this is a wall that Ahmed knows very, very well. So what we, and this is a separation barrier. At this point, this is in Abu Dis, which is within sight of the old city of Jerusalem, but you can't walk there from here. So when we start looking at images, and something I learned from my communication studies colleagues, is that the first thing we're going to be looking at is, what was the intention or the purpose of the message to begin with? And I've kind of boiled it down and simplified it quite a bit. And the intent or purposes that I see are to consolidate popular or local opinion within groups, to intimidate other groups, and then to provoke other groups. Consolidation happens usually within enclaves. Intimidation happens within enclaves and at interface zones, borders between, for example, the Shankill and the Falls Road area. And provocation happens at those interface zones as well. So you can see provocation and intimidation throughout the West Bank, for example. In Northern, we have our combination of consolidation and intimidation here on the gable end of a Republican housing unit, and we've got your intimidation and consolidation on the gable end of a Unionist housing unit. The Republicans tend to be less formal. The Protestants, the Unionists, tend to be more formal. I'll get into that when I talk about transnational or transparent markers. Okay, so here within a Republican enclave, we've got mural of candles, of child martyrs, victims of the violence during the Troubles. And there we've got, in a unionist neighborhood, we've got a memorial to a paramilitary officer. In the unionist housing units when I first visited in 2004, I think it was, a lot of them looked like this, with the paramilitary banner and the hooded gunmen and so on and so forth. I don't think the guy with the newspaper there even sees that anymore. I think he's become inured to it. This gable has now been repainted, and the British government spent a fair amount of time and money and energy trying to convert the paramilitary murals to quote-unquote cultural murals. And this one celebrates the Red Hand of Northern Ireland, which is a contested symbol, but largely used by unionists these days. And the story goes something along the lines of Viking chief on approach to the shore of what would become Northern Ireland says that whoever touches the land first will own it. Well, an enterprising Viking hacks his hand off and throws it ashore, thus ensuring a bloody future for Northern Ireland. But as I said, the icons and symbols are changing. Here's George Best, who's a soccer icon of the Unionists. And if you're going to have your soccer icons, well, we're going to have ours. And so here is a soccer icon in the Falls Road area. What's really interesting to me, and this is true of both Northern Ireland and in areas of the West Bank like Bethlehem, is that these murals and displays become tourist attractions. And so there in 2005 or 6, I don't really remember, are some European tourists who have disembarked from a tour bus, which is out of sight, to take pictures of the Solidarity Wall, which Danny Devaney maintains or maintained on Falls Road. And there is a panel that Danny had painted in 2005, I believe it was, or 6, depicting solidarity with Northern Irish Republicans and Palestinians, and in Arabic and in Gaelic, the translation is roughly "Our Day Will Come." He repaints this panel frequently. This was a few years later in 2009, and he has painted in a very meta kind of way on what is effectively a separation barrier in Belfast. He's painted the Israeli separation barrier in the West Bank, not in a specific location, but in a symbolic way, with Palestinian children gazing at house keys, which of course are symbols of return, like this house key, which is hanging in a turnstile which was at one time the only entrance or exit from the Haitian camp. The Haitian camp was at one time completely enclosed in a wire fence, and the only way in or out was this turnstile. Currently, it serves as a symbol of the wrongs inflicted upon the refugees in 1948 and 1967 and today. So here's where we get into quoting. Okay, so in Northern Ireland, and I talk about transnational quoting here. We're quoting where different causes take sayings, phrases, symbols, and icons and emblems and so forth, and trade them and use them to, in an international context, support each other. So here we are at the entrance to the Bogside area, which is a Republican area in Derry or Londonderry, depending on where you're coming from. And you are now entering Free Derry, is what the well-known sign said. Well, in about 2005, a visiting basketball team from Spain, I heard, was visiting the Haitian camp, and they quoted this on a wall right at the entrance, one of the main entrances to the camp. And this image was repainted later by another group in a little bit more militaristic fashion, I might say. But again, so the intentions here are consolidation of opinion and transnational image making. Okay. This can also be said of very well-known mural of Bobby Sands on the wall of a Sinn Féin bookstore in Falls Road. And of course, Bobby Sands died after a 66-day hunger strike in what became known as the Maze prison, and is well known for many quotes, but "Our revenge will be the laughter of our children" is perhaps the best well known. Interestingly enough, this is Adnan Kandar, who is a Palestinian who's been detained without charges many times by Israelis. And the parallel here that's really fascinating is he was on a hunger strike for 66 days and lived. He's still alive, and I believe is regained his freedom at this point. But they detain him so much that it's hard to tell. On a wall in Al-Ram, which is a Palestinian enclave near the infamous Kalandia checkpoint between Jerusalem and Ramallah on the Israeli barrier, is Bobby Sands' same saying, "Our revenge will be the laughter of our children." I recorded this in 2014. And since we started with Banksy, I thought I should include a few items in 2006 or 7. He had a shop right across from the separation barrier, and sold prints and so on and so forth. I was very skeptical of Banksy at first because he essentially would drop into Bethlehem with a bunch of international street artists and do some work for a few weeks and then leave. But I've changed my mind about that, and we'll get to that in just a second. Possibly his most well-known image. This is on postcards that have gone around the world. And of course, purposefully ironic that it is on the side of a souvenir store in Bethlehem. Other Banksy image on the left. It's not a Banksy image on the right, but it's a Banksy image on the left that was appropriated by the Palestinians and repainted within the Dheisheh Palestinian refugee camp. There was not consensus about Banksy's work at first. In fact, some of it was painted over. There's one image of an IDF soldier stopping a donkey and asking for its papers that met with some local anger and was painted over. The image on the right is not very big. It has been used as the cover of a book, and it's right across the street from Banksy and others' walled-off hotel. Banksy finally put his money where his mouth was, where his paintbrush was, and helped fund what has become. It is actually a hotel. You can rent rooms and stay there. There's a gift store. There's a art gallery. There's a lobby area where you can have coffee or a glass of wine if you want. And of course, the entrance there to the hotel depicts some of Banksy's trademark humor. So the intentions there are, I think, good. He's trying to create a revenue stream for local Palestinians, which is a lot what the work on the wall in and around Bethlehem has become as well. Like the Solidarity Wall in Belfast, the wall around Bethlehem has serving a similar function at this point. I don't know how I feel about that, but let's go on and talk about, okay, so if we want to talk about intent, what do these images actually do? What happens to them, right? So images that are maintained are venerated also. Images that are just allowed to sit there and decay out of indifference, perhaps, or because of costs involved, and then defacement, right, which is the flip side of the provocation, right, the intent of improvocation. Anyone that's been to Bethlehem has probably been through the checkpoint, the main checkpoint between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And a few years ago, it looked like this. Now it's kind of built up and you can't really quite see this sign, but clearly this is the Israelis' attempt at a transnational multilingual message, right? Now, exactly on the opposite side of this wall here is this other message here, which conflates the ghettos of Warsaw, the ghetto of Compton, California, and the ghetto of Bethlehem. This is persistent. This image on the right was recorded in 2007, and this was in 2014. Someone had repainted it. This is rare, by the way, on the wall. The wall generally gets images that get obliterated very quickly. I love the little sub-graffiti there, make love, make sex, whatever, but stop war, down in the lower center. Okay, so the large works on the wall. Actual effect. This is work by a Brazilian street artist named Blue. And Blue is a very sophisticated artist, I think. You can't really see it in this shot, but the giant baby is blowing the heads off of IDF soldiers, and that are then in turn becoming dollar bills. Fairly sophisticated commentary about U.S. monetary support for Israeli military. But it's on the wall, and a few years later, it had been painted over like this, and now it's just completely obliterated. I have no idea why someone would paint animation there. It doesn't make any sense to me. You noticed earlier, and you'll notice here, a blue stripe through all the work. In the world of street art or graffiti, this is known as scrubbing, where you scrub something across someone else's work. This was also done as part of Banksy's Santa's Ghetto in 2007, I believe, by an English street artist, I believe, named Ron English. And you are not in Disneyland anymore. The blue stripe, usually when I see blue paint, I think Israeli patrols, because blue, as you probably know, is the dominant color in their national iconography. More work on the wall near Bethlehem, scrubbed and rescrubbed. And here we go to the wall in Abu Dis. This would have been 2006. And at that time, I was walking around and I asked these two young Palestinian men, if they knew what that image was on the wall behind them. One of them is looking at it. It's a large scale image, a painting of Che Guevara. They had no idea who it was. And this kind of speaks to the idea that a lot of this work, this internationalist work on the wall, is not of great consequence to the local Palestinian population, only in so much as in areas around Bethlehem where it supplies some kind of protest or conflict tourist money. On the same area in Abu Dis in 2006 was this large-scale internationalist image of dove that had been crucified. And there are other paintings in this style in various areas, some of them around Bethlehem. I was told it was an international group from Italy that came, but that's hearsay. I don't actually know, where this came from, but it was impressive, large scale, up on high on the wall. They had to at that time get ladders in there, and there were some logistics involved. But a few years later, in 2012, the Palestinians have built a roadway next to the wall because this area in Abu Dis is close to the large university, Al-Quds University, where I worked for 2 years. And for Palestinians, the getting the students in and out of the university via service, which is the shared taxi you see there in the foreground, was a priority over maintaining internationalist image making on the wall. Now, this stands in stark contrast to, so again, this is an interface zone, right? So it's going to be fluid, it's going to change. This stands in stark contrast to the works within an enclave like Dheisheh. This is Ahmed Midat's mural within the refugee camp, within the camp of Mahmoud Darwish. And a quote, was there, he painted it in 2012 or 13, and he maintains it. He lives in the camp today. After he spent several years in Washington, D.C. Working, but he's gone back to the camp. Interesting reverse migration there. And within the camp also is an image of Ghassan Kanafani. This is at one of the entrances to the camp on the side of a taxi dispatch office. And it was there in 2005 when I first visited. And when I went back the last time I was there in 2014, it had been reglazed, maintained, and clearly venerated. Similarly, this image on the side of what was the family home of a young man named Kafa Obid, who was killed in the Second Intifada. It was there in 2005. It was still there in 2014. We'll come back to this. What's interesting in the camp, I'm fairly well known in Dheisheh. You know, the guy with the canvas bag that walks around in the middle of the day. He must be crazy. The children, the kids, want to be associated with the martyrs, and so they will willingly pose with these images. And I learned later that this young man in the foreground on the right was a cousin of Kafa. Another iteration of this within the camp are stencils of the martyrs This is a young man named Kusai Alafandi, and I kind of like this because it's what do I want to say, Warholian in a way, and on the side of his also on one side of his family's dwelling. So he became, as I said, Shaheed in the Second Intifada. He was shot in the stomach and died later. We encounter Handala throughout the camp. Naj al-Ali's well-known spiky-haired barefoot boy who almost always looks into the image with you, the viewer. And as usual with Naj al-Ali, this is deceptively simple looking. The sword is in fact the tip of a fountain pen. Another Naj al-Ali recreation of a Naj al-Ali painting, a young man named Acer al-Saifi was part of what he called a collective of young people that would put together resources, scan some of Naj al-Ali's work and then project it and then trace the outline. So it's not the freehand work of Ahmed Midat, but it's pervasive and powerful throughout the camp, graphically powerful. I looked and looked for works that would kind of reflect this on the Israeli side of things, and I was able to find very, very little. This image on the inside of a blast wall in the settlement of Hargilo which is near Bethlehem, depicts a Chagall-esque idol. I disclaimed it as not political at first, but then a colleague said, well, it's not political. Everything there is political. There's nothing that's not political. I looked for images that would directly address the conflict, and I found very few. I found this one in the Shuk in West Jerusalem, rare. Much more common are images that look like this, where you can see the beginning of a very, I would say, Western-facing outlook on the Israeli side. This is also in the area of the Shuk in West Jerusalem, New York Times. This is a gift store in right adjacent to the Jewish quarter of the old city. I don't know why, Disney or Warner Brothers or every single major sports organization in the United States doesn't go after some of these for copyright infringement, but they don't. And you can find just about every major cartoon character, sports team you can think of conflated with the Magen David, the Star of David, and Hebrew throughout this, including, and I found this at a gas station in Israel proper, where we're conflating Elvis Presley, who's of course a good Southern Baptist boy, with Judaism. I don't know how this works. I really don't. I think Jackie's seen this as well. Anyway, so actual effect, I'm not really sure, I guess. But one of the things that I have discovered that I think are kind of important are that the dominant cultures, dominant partners in a dominant subordinate dance, if you will, tend to use a very prescriptive litany of images. It tends to be limited, and it tends to be in other words, you must use this image or use this image. And subordinated cultures, and this goes for Palestinians as well as Republicans in Northern Ireland, tend to be much more plastic. And I don't mean plastic by plastic bottle. I mean they're much more manipulative of the images themselves in creative ways. And finally, I think that one of the most potent things that some of these images can provide, especially images by subordinated cultures, is the idea of primary and then secondary witnessing. In other words, you can be a witness, but you don't have to be at the actual event, the actual death of Kaffa Obid. You can be looking at his mural, his image, and you can, in a way, witness what happened. So, is of power. The most prescriptive image in Israel. Prescriptive and pervasive image is, of course, the Star of David and flag of Israel. This image here is on the top of, on a military observation platform on the top of the Mount of Olives. So it's literally a stick in the eye to the Palestinians that live below. We have these flags at settlements in the West Bank, and we can conflate that image to a postcard in a gift shop in Jerusalem with I suppose it's the response to Handala, and that is the Israeli figure of Dash, who is there on the postcard, who is meant to represent, I don't know, plucky. I've heard the term plucky little Israel. I'm not sure I buy it, but there it is on a postcard. So transmuted somewhat, but still the Magen David, still prescriptive. In Northern Ireland, mentioned the bloody red hand before. So here it is again in a Protestant paramilitary mural as the symbol of this owning the land. what I've been told is that it represents what we have, we hold. And in both a literal and a figurative sense in this way, in the bloody hand. And so there's a couple of more examples. UFF is the Ulster Freedom Fighters, another paramilitary, which also include Ulster Defense Association and a few others that are still, by the way, still operate, but mostly as criminal enterprises at this point. And just recently, in a recent visit to Northern Ireland, and this would be 2018, my friend Bill Ralston and I discovered this in East Belfast. East Belfast is the stronghold of unionism in Belfast. And in a rather horrifying way, this flag here conflates the red hand, the Star of David, and the Confederate battle flag. There was a car parked out front that had Confederate battle flag upholstery in it. I know, horrifying, right? Given what's happened recently. This prescriptive use is not limited to overt conflicts like those in Northern Ireland and the West Bank. My friend Jonathan Hyman is the man who traveled up and down the East Coast and inland somewhat, documenting the visual responses to 9/11. And he basically states that almost every single 9/11 memorial mural contains at least one, if not more, of these icons and images: the eagle, bald eagle, American flag, Statue of Liberty, Twin Towers, and police and firefighters. So here are a couple more examples. On the left, Statue of Liberty, Fire Department of New York. On the right, Twin Towers, American flag, and who knew, Big Bird. And as you see, Jonathan Hyman's imprint is down there on the bottom. Okay, so dominant powers tend to be prescriptive in their use of images. Subordinated societies and cultures tend to be much more flexible. So we saw there in its entirety as cast lead, the Israeli incursion into Gaza unfolded in the fall of 2012. Danny went and painted the death toll over it, amended it with a reversal of a John Lennon lyric, Happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, War is over, Happy Christmas, War is over, I think was the original Happy War, Christmas is over, and himself working on another mural of a young martyr named Julie Livingstone, who during the Troubles was collateral damage and shot in the head by a rubber bullet. And of course, as we all know, that often is fatal. And anyway, so not afraid to look at the faces of the dead, I guess is what I'm trying to say here in terms of this plastic use of image making. This is a work by an artist named Hamza Abu Ayash, who I got to know, I interviewed extensively. During hunger strikes, he painted a series of murals on the walls in Bethlehem, in particular around Ramallah. And in this one, the naked prisoner clutching his head, naked, faceless prisoner clutching his head, has extended his guts into the shape of Palestine. And the statement there, I shed my guts for Palestine. Somebody can help me out here. My guts declares my identity. My memory's a little bit spotty. Anyway, this image, by the time I was about ready to leave in late 2014, somebody at the nearby Bethlehem University decided that the image was a little bit too much. They left the text. And I thought that was really an interesting statement. It's not blue paint. I suspect it was somebody from the university who objected to the image itself. So I suppose there's some self-censorship involved, but the fact that this image actually remained for so many years is kind of important to me. Other work by Hamza Abu Ayush, this large work was put on a wall near, what's the name of the coffee house there in Ramallah? Just below a coffee house in Ramallah. It contains his tag there in English and in Arabic, Crazy Horse in English. And then below it to the right, his tag in Arabic. And the transliteration of this is, I believe, Born to Die, if I'm not mistaken. Or our birthdays are the days we die, I think might be more literal. The interesting thing about it to me is that he mixes the use of freehand spray paint and stencil. And he told me he does this on purpose. He did this on purpose because he wanted to evoke dead children, basically. He didn't come out and say that, but I think that's pretty clear when you look at the mural that was painted in opposition to Operation Cast Lead in Gaza. And this is one of the results of that operation. It's the Al-Dalu children who were all killed. I don't remember if it was a bomb or a missile strike on their family dwelling because the Israelis were after their father, who apparently was some kind of Hamas security official. But this kind of carnage is just, it's a war crime in my opinion. And Hamza was trying to evoke it. Their deaths sparked global outrage, I would say. And a spate of transnational images like you want, the one you see on the right, which has Arabic and English. Whenever you see an English language in an image like this, you know they're clearly aiming at an international audience, a transnational audience. Other graffiti artists from Ramallah who are after this transnational audience are a pair of brothers named Bash and Ant are their tag names, and they did this image during Obama's visit of. And this did get some legs internationally. Obama and Abu Mazen in what I learned later was known as a Bruderkuss. Now, Bash and Ant did not know they were, they did not know they were quoting an original news photograph. Were aware of this image, which had been painted on the Berlin Wall by an artist named Dmitry Vrubel, and it was captioned, "May God help me survive this deadly love." And of course, that's Brezhnev and Honecker, then the prime ministers of, prime minister or presidents or whatever, the leaders of the Soviet Union and East Germany. And of course, based on a photo by a photographer named Regis Basu, who actually photographed the event. Bruderkuss was normally on the cheek, each cheek, but apparently if you were really close to your fellow dictator, I guess in this case, dictators, you could just do it first. This was just a couple of years ago in, where is it, Lithuania, on the side of a coffee shop, where we've got Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in the Bruderkuss embrace. And little did Bash and Ant know that they were in a long lineage of transposing this image. They also, both Bash and Ant also do overtly political and critical images, critical of the Palestinian Authority in this case, where we have the symbol of the authority blowing their brains out. Bash and Ant have been detained. They were detained after the Bruderkuss because they were caught painting it, basically. And it was, to my amazement, that they continued later. This would be in 2014, they painted this, painting images like this, because if they got detained again, the consequences could be rather serious. But you can see he's got his Big Bash, has his tag down there in the lower right. Also, during Obama's visit, earlier during Obama's visit, this image appeared up and down Jerusalem Road, which goes from the center of Ramallah through El Bira to Kalandia, and then and all along it were these banners kind of welcoming in a backhanded way Obama. We have no 3G in Palestine is the tag there. Within overnight after they were put up, they had X's on them, and the day after that, they'd all been defaced, as on the right. And then immediately after Obama's visit, they were replaced with what was originally advertising. And we have Twix bars. Actual effect. And this is this image here is an interesting mix of Layla Khalid, famous image of armed female revolutionary, and next to it, and I kind of like this juxtaposition, next to it is a blue mural of a Christmas tree representing Bethlehem, surrounded by the Israeli separation barrier. And what I kind of love about this is that I was able to go, the previous photograph would have been from 2014. 4 years later, in 2018, at the Solidarity Wall in Belfast, I was able to photograph these two young Palestinian women in front of a large mural of Layla Khalid. So I thought that was kind of special. Again, transnational, right? The image on the wall in Bethlehem, the image on the wall in Northern Ireland in Belfast. And also, as part of that image, I just had to throw this in, is this, right nearby where I took the picture of the two young women, is this image of Irish Republican prisoner clasping hands with a Palestinian prisoner. And I thought that was fairly strong and a fairly strong internationalist, transnational statement. So in regard to these, what I call transparent markers, is this idea of witnessing. And I believe that the images provide a way to witness without actually having to be at the event. So that would be as a secondary witness. And I believe that there are even images of these images that I make. For example, I make images of these images that provide a third or tertiary layer to the possibility that you can have an emotional response. Of course, the ultimate witness in all of this is Handala or Hamdallah, the young boy, as I mentioned earlier. That's the invention of Naj al-Ali. And of course, Naj al-Ali himself was shot and killed, right? An image of the man himself that I recorded in Ramallah. And Naj al-Ali was unpopular not only among some factions of Palestinians as well. He was merciless in his pointed pen, poison pen. And shortly after the image on the left was painted, it was defaced within the enclave of Ramallah. So it's blue paint. It could have been an Israeli patrol, but I kind of doubt it. I don't know. The story I've heard is that there was collusion between elements of the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Mossad that got him killed. British authorities actually charged several individuals in both groups. They were never able to bring them to trial, though, to my knowledge. Here is Hamthala looking into a barbed wire fence strewn with house keys, thinking about his village, and there holding flowers to a political prisoner. Here's the recreation of a Najal Ali mural. It's a fairly complicated mural, as I mentioned earlier. He looks simple, but it's really kind of complicated. And there's Handala lying face down, having been murdered. And there he is, kind of in the center, lower center, holding a candle up to himself. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the translation is Palestine is for Palestinian blood. I believe is the upper text there. And this is painted on a garage door within Dheisheh, and it's been there since I started visiting there in 2005. It's still there today. It was still there in 2014, the last time I was in Dheisheh anyway. I'm sure it's still there. So what's interesting to me about some of these images is that they stare back at you. They look back at you. They are looking at you, witnessing them. On the left there is Kane Nugent, who was the first blanket men. I don't know what you know about blanket men, but they were Irish Republican prisoners in British prison who refused to wear prison uniforms because they considered themselves political prisoners, not criminals. So they went naked and wore blankets. Cam Nugent survived this and recently passed away the ripe old age of 85, I think. On the right, you have, again, Kasai Alafandi, and there's this impulse of the children in the camp to associate themselves, to identify with the martyrs, with the Shaheed. And I was taking this picture, she walked right into the frame and stood there, almost like she was daring me to not take the picture. And I took the picture and I heard a voice from behind the window up there on the right say, Baba, and she ran away. I never got a chance to ask her name. See this in many venues. This is a young victim of the Khmer Rouge, and we know that they had a propensity for documenting their victims. And here is, see if I can find his name here. Badran Abudrabu, who, like the young girl, was just out basically playing. He was pushing a tire down the hill there. It's a steep hill. You can't really tell from the photograph, but he was pushing a tire down with that stick. He got in front of my camera and stopped and just looked at me. I just found it remarkable. Badran Abudrabu, and the text there reads, again, please feel free to correct me. If my weapon comes out, I will not hesitate to use it. There's Handala looking into the ruined landscape, and the weapon in this case is either a paintbrush or a conductor's baton. Again, deceptively simple weapon. This idea of witnessing, of course, and the gaze back is heartbreaking in this case of a Holocaust victim. I'm just trying to make a point here about the gaze. That's what I'm trying to do. In this case of Kafa Obeid and his cousin, who asked to be photographed with his relatives there. I don't want to leave this on a down, too much of a down note, so we'll go back to Northern Ireland, to Belfast, and quickly tell you a story about this image, which is borrows from Banksy, by the way. Banksy painted a similar image on the separation barrier, Israeli separation barrier in Abu Dis, near Abu Dis. But in this case, Danny Devaney and Mark Levine have painted themselves into the landscape through the wall as young boys. And what the story there is that Danny Devaney is a Republican. Mark Levine is the son of a prominent unionist family. And they decided, for a time at least, that they were going to paint murals together. And they did. And so this is one of their collaborations, interestingly enough. We'll go back to Kafah al-Bid finally. And I will say that for all the protest tourists, conflict tourists, and everything that make pilgrimages to Bethlehem, and I will just say that these children in the foreground are making a much more profound pilgrimage on a daily basis to and from their homes and the store where they buy groceries to the right of the frame there. I believe that their journey back and forth in front of Kafah is much more profound than any internationalist tourist who goes to Bethlehem to paint on the wall, including Banksy. So finally, we have transparent markers. And what am I finding? Well, there's a prescriptive use of symbols and icons by a dominant culture. There's a potent use of martyrdom by a subordinate culture, especially in images of child martyrs and prisoners. So martyrdom comes in a few different flavors. You don't have to actually die. You can go to prison, though, for a long time. Dying, of course, elevates it to the next level. And reception of the images as a form of primary and secondary, and I would say, in addition, tertiary or third stage or third level witnessing. I'm happy to any questions and so on.
Any questions? That was a wonderful, marvelous presentation. Fadeed, hi. You have a question for Phil?
And first of all, I didn't really realize that the sync had slipped so badly there toward the end.
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm a political poet.
Mm-hmm.
My uncle was in prison as a political prisoner. My father lost 2 houses down. I was in Gaza in 2010 after the invasion. It's a statement or it's a question. Hamza Abu Ayash, I know well, hunger striker. I'm an artist as well.
Right.
All I do for my Palestine. The graffiti that we do is a witness to the atrocities of what the Israelis are doing to us. I was in Belfast in 1987. And an IRA Belfast man would not let me go in London. And he said, we should meet. I said, where? He goes, in Belfast. And I was detained in London in Heathrow Airport. When they asked me, why do you come here? So I said, I come to my father's land. So they brought me an MI6 to interrogate me and say that one more time. I said, yes, I was in my mother's land and now in my father's land.
Wow. And
they held me for 6 hours. I've jotted down all your information, some of it. Naji Al-Ali is a hero to us. Yes, there was collusion with the PLO, and the Mossad usually is. And I want to salute you for all the information you've given.
Mm.
The reason we ran away, that girl ran away,
Mm.
because of repercussions of what the Israelis do. They
Mm.
keep tabs on us no matter where we go,
Mm.
including anywhere we go.
Mm.
So I just want to say you honor me with your information. Some of the information you gave, some of the words were a little off, but mostly on target.
My Arabic is very poor.
Yes, but it's almost there. When you said my guts declare my identity, that's what it means. My guts declare my identity.
Right.
My visions and my nightmares declare my identity.
Mm-hmm.
My paintings and my soldiers at the window, when I saw a soldier breaking down bones of a neighbor of mine, is my identity.
Mm-hmm.
In 1988, the first Intifada. I am a witness. My older brother is a witness. But we get shut down. We have been silent. I have been silent for 30 years. I'm not silent no more because my parents are dead and because my father's house is down twice. So I'm not silent no more. And I want to thank you for doing this. And you are definitely not my white hope, but you're my comrade in arms. And the IRA they're my brothers. We are still in the struggle. And Trump has took us further to annihilation. That's all I want to say. And I wrote a long poem for Naji Al-Ali. Handala.
Maybe next Sunday, when 2 Sundays we have Poetry Day, maybe you could read it to us then, Fuddy. Would you do that?
I will.
That would be great. I saw an exhibit of his work in Amman. He was quite an accomplished artist, and his work is very diverse. I really enjoy them. I hope I can find the images of them for a future presentation, but it was just so fabulous. Steve, can you, would you like to say something since you have some experience? Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. Me?
No, Steve. Okay.
She's talking to me, I think.
Yeah.
I actually sitting and listening to Philip's presentation, my observations are relatively trivial. But I did visit Belfast back in 2006. And as I'm walking through the city, I noticed that everywhere I saw the IRA flag, I saw the Palestinian flag side by side with it.
Right.
And it was only at that moment that the parallels between the struggles of Palestine and Ireland, the Republicans in Northern Ireland, struck me. So I just wanted to relay that as one person's experience that reinforces everything that Philip was talking about. I have a poem that I wrote when I was in Belfast. If you like, I can reserve that too.
Yeah, we'll do that on our Poetry Slam Sunday.
When you have a poetry day.
Yeah, that'll be the first Sunday in February.
But yeah. I have one question for Philip, which is, you mentioned that there was a difference between one side of the wall and the other in terms of the preservation of some of these murals, that within the refugee camp, there was much more of a tendency for things to last than on the other side of the wall. And the first image you showed was Mahmoud Darwish, who of course is a revered figure and revered poet in Palestine and the whole Arab world for that matter. I'm just curious, in your experience, to what extent is the subject matter? I mean, I can see people preserving um, the mural of Mahmoud Darwish because of who he was and what he represents. And I'm wondering whether you have any thoughts about how much the subject matter of the mural or the painting affects how long it lasts, in addition to where it's located.
Well, first of all, most of the work on the separation barrier or the apartheid wall is by international conflict or protest tourists, especially around Bethlehem. It's not by very many local artists. Sometimes when the wall is in close proximity, as in Abu Dis, there may be a poster in Arabic, uh, but it's not all that common. So what you have is this, especially around Bethlehem, is this sort of this chaotic plethora of people coming and just putting messages up. I have a problem with many uh, conflict tourists or protest tourists, and I define them in this way. A conflict tourist is basically someone who comes and takes a picture of the wall, and that's what they do. They're touristic. They don't do much else. They get off the tour bus, they take a picture, they get back on. Protest tourists may be a little bit more active. Maybe they go to a protest. Maybe they actually paint something. But I'm skeptical about much of the internationalist image making that goes on the wall, largely because they parachute in, they stay for a few hours or maybe a few days or maybe a week or two, and then they leave, and that's it. And the people that live in the camps and the Palestinians that live in the enclaves are there. They're it's a daily basis. That's what I was trying to say about the pilgrimage in the end with the kids going back and forth from their homes to the store. That to me is a holy pilgrimage they make underneath the gaze of a martyr. So and the martyrs, if you didn't catch my drift there, they're the part of the identity of the camp. So they tend to be very persistent with the image making within the camp. There's very few instances that I ever see that anyone painted anything over the image of a martyr or someone who had become shaheed. Hardly ever. So I think that's the big difference. I mean, I think subject matter within the camp is perceived differently because the different lives that are being lived there than the subject matter on the wall where people come and go, say, and maybe only look at it for a short time. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's so I'm still a little bit skeptical about Banksy, but he did finally put his money where his mouth is and help buy a building which is directly across from the separation barrier, and it does employ quite a few local people. So I was
one of the things that's amusing is before the Pope's visit, they painted everything over on the wall. The Israelis painted the entire wall, destroying a lot of really great murals, because I used to go to Bethlehem and photograph them every summer. But they, before the Pope arrived, they were new murals put up. So it was, like you said, it's kind of this game, this dance back and forth that goes on. Do you think also, Phyllis, that the Israelis would be more reluctant to go into the camp to get rid of the murals, that it's more dangerous for them? It would cause more of a problem than just where they more readily on the other separation wall, they just can easily paint them over. What do you think?
Well, whenever they go into the camp, it's a military operation.
Right. Yeah.
And it has to go to that level. I mean, and not in just Dheisheh, but in any of the larger camps. I mean, it has to become a military operation for them. So there's that. I also think that the flip side of the apartheid wall is on the Israeli side is virtually blank. So and so conversely, within Israel, there's going to be a tremendous amount of social pressure to comment on the wall, I think.
So maybe that's why it gets so chaotic in places like Bethlehem, because it's the outlet. I don't know. I don't know. Uh, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or not, really.
I think I have seen some Israeli protest art, though, like these 16 kids who just refused to go into the military. They talked about it last week. I have seen some anti-occupation stuff posted by Israeli protesters.
Not
But
so much, not so much on the wall. I've never seen it on the wall itself. Maybe online, but on
yeah,
the wall itself, I've never seen it. And Hamza Abu Aish made the point in an article he wrote, and when I interviewed him and talked to him, he said, you know, if Israeli activists want to go paint on the wall on the Israeli side, but do they? No. So, so, uh, and it's different, you know, depending on proximity to. I will say that, you know, I was lucky to be living in Ramallah for 2 years and able to kind of watch artists like Hamza Abu Aish and Bash and Ant, watch their work kind of develop over a period of time. That was a very good experience to me, and to get to know them. Anyway.
well, it was wonderful. Anybody? Oh, Fareed?
I just want to comment on the wall. I have painted a lot of stuff on the wall. My sister used to live on the wall. Her son was arrested 3 times for a
Right,
mistaken identity.
right,
And whenever I discuss anything with her about the wall, she gets very defensive and she goes,
right,
I just need to live. I'm like, what do you mean by that? And I've seen her 11 years later and she says, I don't want you to talk about the wall.
right.
I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, I just don't want you to talk about the wall. I know why you're here. You're here for a book. I said, no, I'm here for Palestine. And we had a fight.
Hmm.
And I felt very disengaged with her. And her son was arrested 3 times
Mm,
because he was on the wall.
right.
Uh, it's difficult. Our wall, that wall is snaking into Palestinian lands.
Oh yeah, I know. I know.
And it really is painful that that wall should not be existing.
I couldn't agree with you more. One of my students has a group in Abu Dis, and at night they regularly take sledgehammers and break holes in the wall, and then they come and fix it, and then they break them again. And now they've stopped because there's a surveillance drone that's parked overhead most of the time. So yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it's difficult for us to understand the what living in fear
Right.
is like. And you know, it's easy to make suggestions that people should do this, that, and the other thing, but living in fear daily basis, just which emphasizes your idea of the children being on pilgrimage, just going to the shop and back. You know we it's hard for us living outside to really fully comprehend the emotional impact of that and the traumatic. I mean, they're all in post-trauma stress. I mean, you know, they're all living under terrible effects of the trauma, which affects them, I'm sure, in every aspect of their life. Does anybody else have any questions for film? Has everybody seen The Wall? Sarah, have you seen it? When you were traveling in Israel, did you see The Wall?
No, I've seen the wall in Belfast.
Ah, okay, but you're not the one in Palestine. Yeah,
No.
yeah. It's. I remember when I first went. I went with my girlfriend, who's from an Orthodox Jewish family. We went for the first celebration of Christmas that they had in Bethlehem. It was like 2007. It was the first time after the Intifada that they had opened up Bethlehem, and I was so shocked seeing the wall on the bus. Both of us were in total shock. It reminded me of all the World War II Nazi movies I I'd seen as a kid. It was, the towers, the German shepherds, the guns. It was totally traumatizing for me just to see the wall and the towers. And my friend also, we were like, it left us speechless and actually terrified us. It was very, my experience was, I was really scared all the time because I was constantly surrounded by guns or, towers with guns pointing at me. It was very, very frightening when you're traveling there. I remember when I used to go across the bridge to visit Palestine and Jerusalem and Israel. When I get back over to Jordan, I wanted to go down and kiss the ground. I was so relieved because it's so stressful to be in Israel and Palestine because of the constant threat of violence. So thanks, Phil. I really appreciated so much your presentation. It was so thoughtful, and I want to look at this again. I put these up on, I make a YouTube film of all these presentations, but I really want to see, I'm going to watch your presentation again because it was so informative and addresses so many levels. I particularly love that picture of Putin and Trump kissing each other. So that's something good to reflect on this week. So, so I wish everybody, yeah.
Let me just thank everybody for coming. Okay.
It was just fabulous, Phil. And when do you think you'll get back? He had a Fulbright, but he had to come back because of COVID. Do you think you'll be able to go back, Phil?
I think I'm going back in spring 2022.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Yeah. Did you get your shot yet?
Not yet, no. But I got past the first level of peer review for another Fulbright though. So
good, great. I got my shot yesterday, my first shot.
Good.
And I haven't grown scales. I'm not glowing in the dark. Bill Gates isn't talking to me on a microchip. I seem to be perfectly normal. So I'm hoping with after the second shot that I can go back to Amman this summer. That's what my plan is to, and then go to Hebron and work in that camp. I'm going to be doing a presentation on Hebron shortly because that's another interesting situation that people are not aware of in this country. So again, thank you, Phil, and everybody for coming and bringing your light to the world. I'll blow out the light and wish everyone well and carry on. We have a lot of work to do with the new administration coming in to try to bring information and push as much as we can for a change in our policy. So
thank you for putting this together, Jackie, and especially Fareed, thank you for your kind words.
Thank you for being here. I want to thank you for that. It means a lot to the Palestinians.
Okay, Fareed, masalama.
Salam.
Salam, everybody. Okay, bye-bye.